It's a solvable problem, but it could cost you your dream business and life. Don't give up because you can fix these mistakes. Starting with the first one. It's why people sometimes think a strategy isn't working for them, which can be incredibly frustrating and disappointing. I've been there. But the good news is, it's also the easiest to fix. For example, you might have heard that being consistent with your marketing, like posting on social media, is key to growth. And that part's right. But a client once asked me, I've been posting every day for months and it is just not working for me. I pulled up her feed and immediately saw the mistake. She was posting motivation, personal updates, quotes, lots of content, but none of it related to her business. No matter what strategy you're using, when you focus on the accomplishment of it, you get it done, but not necessarily with the results you want. Instead, focus on how you're doing something. This way, you will get much better results. High five to that. But it's a fine line because you don't want to get too caught up in the how either. I've made this mistake a lot because I love learning and diving into the details. I'm still an engineer at heart, but when you overdo it, it can cost you your business. Unfortunately, a lot of marketing advice trains us to do just that. Like if you've been thinking that if you just master this one thing, your business will take off. For me, that thing was copywriting. But I actually made fewer sales when I was obsessing about it, even though I got a lot better at the skill. Because it is important to always be learning and growing. But if you focus too much on the wrong thing, it can distract you from something much more crucial. At the end of the day, your customers don't care how good your marketing and business skills are. I learned what they really care about by accident. In my first online business, I would just hop on live streams and teach. And every month people would tell me, I saw your live stream and knew you were the coach for me. Not because of my fancy copywriting, which was not that great back then anyways, but because if your customers feel a connection to you, that can overcome most weaknesses in your business and your skills. Plus, building connection these days is incredibly simple. Create content, do it every day. But I know it's easier said than done. Because if that's really the case, why do so many people do it without getting the results they want? If I had relied on just posting content to grow my business, I probably would have gone out of business by now. Because contrary to popular unwisdom, trying to grow that way is really hard. But the good news is, you don't have to rely on that way to grow. Here's my favorite analogy for how to do it much more easily. Now, my grandparents raised me until I was 5 because my parents were working really hard to establish themselves in America. The typical immigrant story. Every week, my grandpa would prepare for his Friday routine. He'd get his fishing gear, lay out his clothes, and go to sleep early. At 3 or 4 the next morning, he'd tiptoe out the door so as to not wake us up, and he'd go with his friends to the latest fishing spot that everyone was talking about. That part's the key. They went where the fish already were. You'll grow a lot faster if you use the same advice. Create content in places where your customers already are. Like pitching yourself to be interviewed on a podcast they already listen to, or to do a collab with an account they already follow. This way, you don't have to wait for them to find you out of billions of social media accounts. But no matter where you're sharing your content, there's one really important thing to include. The problem is that it's so easy for anybody to start publishing content these days. That makes it easier for us to grow our businesses, but also harder for your customers to know who to trust. If you're creating great content and maybe even getting some sales inquiries, but not making the sales you want, then there's likely an essential piece missing from your marketing. One of the first things I did when I crossed 7 figures was to pitch what I'd done as an article idea to Forbes, Business Insider, and more. But my primary goal wasn't actually the PR. When you make an income claim on these publications, they ask for proof, like your tax returns and confirmation from your CPA. This way, you know it's not just me making an income claim that may or may not be true. It's an example of one way you can make it easier for your audience to know you're telling the truth. Because if the people or organizations your customers trust you, or have vetted you already, that goes a long way. But this is a little different from the common advice to just share what you know and build trust that way. You should do that for sure, but you should also give your potential customers more reasons to trust you versus distrust you. You don't need to have fancy PR to do it either, because your credentials can work just as well. Even simpler than that, you can build trust via good old-fashioned proof that you've helped others get the results you're promising, or that you've done for yourself what you now help others with. But be careful how you go about it, because you've probably heard to share your story so you can better connect with your audience. That is absolutely true, but there is a fine line too, because the danger is it can be really easy to make your messaging all about you, which unfortunately is not that interesting to your potential customers. A common example is the "how I did what I can now help you with" story, aka your hero's journey. The problem is, most people stop after telling their experience, but that's not actually the point of that story. The point is to let your potential customers know what's possible for them via your example and that you can help them. But most aren't bridging that gap in their content. This one simple change can make a big difference in boosting your audience's engagement and interest. But it won't last if you don't think you're interesting enough to keep your audience's attention. I used to be so scared that I was too boring, but it wasn't true for me and it's not true for you either. That's why in this next video, I break down how sharing my boring interests made me a millionaire. So you can see how to turn who you are and what you know right now into a massively profitable online business.